It's October 19th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with Israel's approval of humanitarian aid entering Gaza. Israel says it will let Egypt deliver some aid to Gaza as long as the goods do not reach Hamas. The approval was announced by U.S. President Joe Biden, who also said it appears that Israel is not responsible for Tuesday's blast at a Gaza hospital that killed hundreds. China's Xi Jinping and Russia's Vladimir Putin showed off their intimacy at China's Third Belt and Road Forum, keeping Western countries, including apparently the U.S., in check, while making no official joint comment on the war in the Middle East. South Korea's central bank is holding its policy rate-setting meeting in the coming hour, where it's likely to leave the 3.5% rate unchanged for the sixth time straight. Israel says it will allow food, water, and medicine for civilians in Gaza through the border with Egypt under one condition, that none of these items reach Hamas. The first agreement on aid came during U.S. President Joe Biden's Israel trip for a show of solidarity with Israel. Park Kwon-woo with the latest.
Following talks between U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday, the Prime Minister's office announced it would not prevent aid from entering Gaza through its border with Egypt. The Israeli government stressed that relief should only reach civilians in Gaza, adding food, water, and medicine will be the only supplies allowed through. It also said it would maintain a blockade of humanitarian aid from Israel into Gaza until hostages being held by Hamas are released. And despite a U.S. veto of a UN resolution condemning all violence against civilians in the war between Israel and Hamas and urging humanitarian aid for Gaza, Biden followed up talks with Netanyahu with a pledge to support both Israel and Gaza. He said he is considering a supplementary request to Congress for some $100 billion for defense assistance, with some of those funds to be used for Israel. And he also said he would send around $100 million in humanitarian aid to Gaza. Regarding the deadly explosion at the Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza on Tuesday, Biden said that it appears Israel was not responsible for the blast. According to a National Security Council spokesperson, the assessment that another Palestinian militant group caused the explosion was made based on data including intelligence, missile activity, and open-source video and images of the incident. Meanwhile, also on Wednesday, the U.S. Treasury Department announced sanctions against 9 individuals in one entity in places including Gaza, Sudan, and Qatar over suspicions they have links to Hamas. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen noted the United States is taking swift and decisive action to target Hamas's financiers and facilitators following its brutal and unconscionable massacre of Israeli civilians, including children. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
Chinese President Xi Jinping called for developing countries to grow together, as he said he will continue to support developing countries as part of his Belt and Road Initiative. He also warned Western countries against decoupling from his country's economy. Lee Seung-jae has more.
During the opening of the Third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation on Wednesday, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized the importance of building alliances between developing countries, adding that it's through such alliances that countries can prosper together.
Belt and Road cooperation is based on the belief that the flame runs high when everyone adds wood to the fire and that mutual support can get us far. Such cooperation seeks to deliver a good life not only to people of just one country but to people in other countries as well. It promotes connectivity, mutual benefit, common development, cooperation and win-win outcomes.
He also said that countries with rapid economic development must help underdeveloped partner countries and pledged that China will spare no effort in deepening cooperative partnership with other nations and realizing the modernization of each country. The Chinese leader also criticized Western countries and warned against decoupling from his country's economy, stressing that China stands against the unilateral sanctions it has faced over the years.
Ideological confrontation, geopolitical rivalry and bloc politics are not a choice for us. What we stand against are unilateral sanctions, economic coercion, and decoupling and supply chain disruption.
Meanwhile, as China and Russia have shared stances on international issues, there was speculation that a statement on a joint position on the Israel-Hamas armed conflict would be forthcoming, but none was released. However, after the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, Putin held a separate press conference where he described the recent deadly blast at a Gaza hospital as a catastrophe and stated that he did not want the conflict to worsen. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The two leaders of China and Russia once again showed off their tight friendship, this time at China's third Belt and Road Forum. Let's discuss more about what they put their heads together on with Dr. Pu this morning. Great to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Dr. Pu, the two leaders held a 3-hour-long bilateral meeting with the Ukraine crisis, of course, topping the agenda. Now, Beijing has faced heavy criticism for standing by Moscow in the conflict. Xi probably again sided with Putin during Wednesday's talks too, right?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit complicated. So my observation is that Beijing is determined to maintain its so-called strategic partnership with Russia, despite all the international criticism, especially from the West. So, but on the other hand, the strategic partnership is different from military alliances because both China and Russia want to maintain their strategic autonomy as well, because Beijing is put into a very awkward situation in the Ukraine crisis. Beijing needs to maintain strategic partnership with Russia to balance against the U.S. Power in global balance of power politics. But Beijing also needs to respect UN Charter sovereignty, and also China needs to maintain its much broader economic ties with European countries and the United States. Overall, I think it's a very complicated relationship.
Right, the Ukraine crisis has put China in a very uncomfortable situation at the moment. Now, Xi-Putin talks also took place under the shadow of another conflict over in the Middle East. Now, would you say the two leaders were on the same page when it comes to the war?
Yeah, you mean regarding the Israel-Palestinian conflict, looks like both China and Russia share some common ground. These two countries have a long-term support of Palestinians' struggle for their statehood in diplomatic platform. But on the other hand, I should also emphasize both China and Russia have a very friendly and cooperative relations with Israel as well. So for this particular conflict, I think both China and Russia, on the one hand, share some common ground, but also they need to manage the relationship, manage their diplomatic position regarding the conflict in a very careful manner as well.
Is that why there was no joint comment from the two leaders?
Maybe, it could be. I think China definitely really maybe consider Israel's perspective. Maybe that could be a consideration.
Sure. Let's also talk about Xi's BRI opening remarks. He warned against decoupling from China, now calling out Western efforts to reduce dependence on the Chinese economy. That's a message targeting the U.S., right?
Yeah, to some degree. I would think it might target both the United States as the broader global community. I think China definitely wants to emphasize decoupling from China will not be successful in the long term because, number one, China has become the largest trading partner for more than 100 countries worldwide. So, and also secondly, Beijing wants to emphasize China has already a key player in global economy. So decoupling will be too costly for the global community, including for the United States. I think that might be one of the message Beijing want to emphasize.
Sure, Dr. Pu, and it wasn't just Vladimir Putin. Representatives from more than 130 countries, mostly from developing, attended the forum. And Xi Jinping also put a lot of effort into, conveying a welcoming attitude towards them. Why is that?
I think China wants to emphasize it has still has many friends, particularly in the developing world. Despite the Western sort of criticism, China might want to demonstrate it's still a very active player in global community. And also Xi Jinping emphasized a lot about the so-called win-win cooperation. BRI could be opportunities for developing countries. Ultimately, I think, according to Xi Jinping's narrative, China and the world are interdependent toward each other. I think that might be also an important message.
Sure. It was China's third, or Xi's third Belt and Road Forum. Now, how successful do you think this edition was this year?
I think any kinds of evaluation might largely depends on who we are talking about. Definitely, in the eyes of the Chinese government or the Chinese leaders like Xi Jinping, this international forum of BRI could be a great success because it has demonstrated China's leadership. It has demonstrated all the achievements in the past 10 years. And also one thing I want to highlight is that they want to build a secretariat with the forum. That means they want to even deepen and also institutionalize the platform in the coming years. I think that might be positive. But on the other hand, I would argue that BRI might still face a lot of challenges, both at home and abroad. Whether China can recover from its recent economic problems, right? So I think economic growth, that's much more a problem for China right now. I think, and also whether China can manage its rising tensions with the United States. I think that will also be an important factor going forward, I think, yeah.
Indeed. Dr. Pu, thank you so much, as always, for your insight this morning. You have a good evening.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And in the meantime, South Korea has condemned China's reported repatriation of North Korean refugees at the UN as a grave human rights incident. Seoul's ambassador to the UN, Hwang Jung-guk, made the remarks during a session on Wednesday, presumably referring to the claims by human rights groups that China last week forcibly sent back around 600 North Korean defectors who were detained in the provinces of Jilin and Liaoning. Hwang also expressed extreme concerns about the horrors the defectors will face once sent back, including the death penalty. The envoy called on the international community not to tolerate such incidents, citing experts' views who point to the international principle of non-refoulement. And China and North Korea have not made any comment on the matter. North Korea's envoy to the UN the previous day claimed that all residents live well and enjoy political freedom. With the Bank of Korea policy-setting meeting taking place in the coming hour, the central bank is likely to freeze key interest rates at 3.5% for the sixth consecutive time. According to a survey of 6 economic experts conducted by Yonhap News Agency earlier this week, all 6 experts unanimously said that the BOK will likely freeze rates. Experts say while a 2 percentage point gap with the U.S. Fed may put pressure on the BOK, the central bank will not be able to hike rates due to uncertainties over the country's economic recovery. They added that the central bank will likely begin a rate-cutting cycle in the second quarter of next year at the earliest. Attending an event marking the 78th National Police Day, President Yoon doubled down on his will to protect the vulnerable from vicious crimes. Now, on that note, he vowed to restructure the police. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon Suk-yeol has promised his support to the nation's police as he called on the agency to be especially tough on crimes targeting the vulnerable, while reorganizing the structure for it to be more centered around public safety.
특히 성폭력, 아동학대, 가정폭력, 스토킹과 같이 약자를 상대로 하는 범죄는 절대 용납되어서는 안 됩니다. 국민들께서 일상에서 범죄의 위협과 두려움을 느끼지 않고 안전하게 사실 수 있도록 모든 역량을 집중해 주시기 바랍니다.
This came as the nation's police will be celebrating its 78th anniversary on Saturday and held the National Police Day ceremony at the former presidential office, Cheongwa-dae, in advance on Wednesday. The ceremony included presidential recognition for the police officers for their achievements as well as those who have been lost in the line of duty. 31 representatives from other nations' police agencies as well as international organizations' police departments attended the anniversary event as well to enhance cooperation. Yoon at the event also repeated his promise to deliver better support to the agency with new equipment, which he has already been promising since the series of random knife attacks in August.
흉악 범죄에 대한 효과적 대응을 위해 방범 장구, 저위험 권총 등 신형 첨단 장구를 신속히 보급할 것입니다.
Police Commissioner Yoon also faced the reality during the ceremony, saying that the anxieties and fears that penetrate the daily lives of the people pose a new challenge to law enforcement, promising to keep communities safe. However, President Yoon didn't forget to cheer on the police as it has come a long way since 78 years ago, mentioning that the arrest rate is around 95% and phishing scams have gone down by 30% on year. He also said the sacrifices will be deservedly compensated. President Yoon, ending his keynote speech, said that a nation's #1 reason for existence is to keep its citizens safe and that he will do his part to support the police's sacrifices. He also urged police officers to never forget this fundamental duty of securing public safety and always strive to be the police of the people. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The quick rise of generative artificial intelligence in the workplace has led to projections of a great transformation in the way people work in the future. Over in Poland, one company is experimenting with an AI robot CEO. Lee In-jin has the story.
A drinks company in Poland has recently appointed a humanoid robot as an experimental CEO. Her name is Mika, an AI robot powered by ChatGPT-style large language models. Her roles include conducting team meetings, verifying potential client lists, and providing well-reasoned decisions to the board of directors.
Well, as a robot CEO, I don't really have weekends. I'm always on 24/7, ready to make executive decisions and stir up some AI magic.
Mika's decision-making process relies on extensive data analysis, which means her contributions are devoid of personal bias. But she doesn't have actual executive powers, like hiring and firing personnel.
There is no concern like artificial intelligence could hire or fire somebody. It's still the major decisions, significant decisions are still in human executive team hands.
Experts forecast that the rise of such humanoid social robots could affect the way businesses work in the next 5 to 10 years. Some people have expressed concerns of such AI robots taking away jobs, but the robots themselves claim this will not happen. During a news conference with robots in Geneva, the robots advised reporters that they could be more efficient leaders than humans, but wouldn't take anyone's job away and had no intention of rebelling against their creators.
Do you think we should be excited or scared by the rise of humanoid robots?
That's a difficult question. I think it depends on how they are used and what purpose they serve. We should be cautious, but also excited for the potential of these technologies to improve our lives in many ways.
I will be working alongside humans to provide assistance and support, and will not be replacing any existing jobs.
Expert analysis and forecast remain mixed. The World Economic Forum projected new technologies to lead to a net loss of some 14 million jobs by the year 2027. Meanwhile, Goldman Sachs estimated that if half the world's businesses introduced AI workforce, global GDP would increase by 7% over the next decade. While it is still early to know what a future of humans and AI working together will look like, it could create both threats and opportunities. 이은진, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. The United States Pentagon on Tuesday released footage showing over 180 occasions that Chinese military aircraft flew close to U.S. warplanes. Now, the incidents took place over the South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific region and have been described by U.S. officials as coercive and risky. The intercepts recorded over the past 2 years have concerned the officials, who say that this number is more than the total amount recorded over the previous decade. If U.S. allies are included, the number of such events goes up to roughly 300. Washington is worried that the incidents could lead to an unintended clash that could spark a war. The release of the footage comes ahead of the Pentagon's annual China Military Power Report, which analyzes Beijing's military power and potential security threats to U.S. partners in the Indo-Pacific. Now in the U.S., the long-suspected killer of an Alabama teen in 2005 has admitted to her murder. Dutchman Joran van der Sloot on Wednesday admitted to killing Natalee Holloway on a beach on the Caribbean island of Aruba and dumping her body into the ocean. Van der Sloot's confession came as part of a plea deal with prosecutors in an extortion case with Holloway's family. He was accused of trying to extort $250,000 from Natalee's mother for information about her death. Van der Sloot has been sentenced to 20 years in prison on federal charges, but has not been charged with Holloway's murder, which falls outside of U.S. jurisdiction. Now, his sentence will run concurrently with a 28-year sentence he was given by a Peruvian court for killing a local woman there in 2010. In London, the British Museum is planning to digitize its entire collection. The decision was announced on Wednesday, and it comes after it was discovered earlier this year that around 2,000 artifacts had been stolen. A staff member was fired for the thefts. Some 350 of the missing items are being returned, and security measures around the museum have been heightened. The British Museum currently has some 8 million objects in its collection, including the famed Rosetta Stone and the Parthenon marbles. But it has been facing calls for some countries to return certain historical treasures. And finally, a fully restored double-decker bus used by former Beatle Paul McCartney and his band Wings is headed for auction. It's expected to fetch bids in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. Painted in psychedelic artwork, the 1953 Bristol KSW double-decker bus was used for a 1972 European tour. Now restored to its former glory, the bus will go under the hammer at the Played, Worn and Torn auction that's set for mid-November in Nashville and online. The American-British rock band was formed by McCartney and his late wife Linda after the Beatles broke up. It included drummer Denny Seiwell and guitarist Denny Lane.
Good morning. There has been a sudden weather shift overnight. We are having rain with warmer temperatures this morning. Rain has picked up in the capital area compared to the earlier parts of the day. Then these rain clouds will move further south by the afternoon. And until Friday morning, most places could see 5 to 20 millimeters of showers. Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsang-Bukdo provinces could see more than 40 millimeters of rainfall. It's a warmer start to the day, nearly 8 degrees higher than the same time yesterday in the capital. But highs will only hike a couple of degrees higher than morning temperatures. Now, Gyeongsang-do provinces and surrounding areas, including Jeju, will be free from rain today. But the rest of the south will have a rainy afternoon, while central regions will see rain letting up after lunchtime. Today's rain will bring cooler air to the country, and we could be waking up to the chilliest morning temperatures of the season this weekend in most places. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.